those of us that are within this industry, I mean, we know this plant. A lot of us, dedicate our lives to this and we really care about this. And others just have no concept of how much effort and passion that we all have and put forward in this, but also how much of a positive impact this can have in so many levels.
That's Courtney Moran, Chief Legislative Strategist for Agricultural Hemp Solutions and Legal Counsel for the National Hemp Association. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and on today's show, we're talking to hemp lobbyist and legal strategist Courtney Moran, who was in D.C. last week lobbying for the 2023 Industrial Hemp Act, which is gaining support from both sides of the aisle in both houses of Congress. We'll get an update on the exemption, plus we'll also talk about the Farm Bill and whether we'll see one this year or not. And what about that recent recommendation from the Department of Health and Human Services? They want the DEA to reschedule marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act. What impact will that have on the hemp industry? All that and more on today's show, but first a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you in part by IND Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where they believe in the goodness of hemp. IND Hemp is a family-owned, mission-driven, and environmentally focused industrial hemp food, feed, and fiber company, providing new opportunities for farmers and rural communities. Their mission is to provide innovative agricultural products and services to connect American farmers with the pioneers and businesses that see hemp as a way to bring real and lasting change to our communities and planet. Learn more at indhemp.com. This episode is brought to you in part by Impactful Ventures, an investment and incubation company focused on supporting startups and other initiatives that play a vital role in mitigating the adverse effects of climate change. At Impactful Ventures, they strive to amplify enterprises that bring innovative, green opportunities to the forefront and empower those making a significant impact for a sustainable future. You can learn more at impactfulventures.org. Courtney Moran from Agricultural Hemp Solutions, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing?
I am very well, Eric. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
Crazy times, but I was hoping to get an update from you on the 2023 Industrial Hemp Act, also known as the Hemp Exemption. So what's going on with that these days?
Yeah, so actually we were just in DC last week lobbying for support for the Industrial Hemp Act. And it was a really successful trip. We had a great time. And when I say we, I mean Erica Stark, Executive Director of the National Hemp Association, Jeff Whaling, President of the National Hemp Association, and then Marnie Coit, who is an attorney who's also been volunteering with Agricultural Hemp Solutions to help us with our policy and our research over the last year and a half. So we had a really solid team come out to DC. We also had some different stakeholders join us at the meeting, and we actually held an open house on the House side last week. And what that was we had a room actually in the Cannon House building where we were able to display different hemp products so that members and their staff were able to come in and actually see what we're talking about when we say the words industrial hemp.
Okay, what did you bring? What products were there?
There were a lot of different products. We were very fortunate to have donations from several different companies, including Hemp Wood and IND Hemp. We had hemp flooring, hemp cabinetry, animal bedding. We had biochar. We had jet fuel. We had the parts of the stalk broken out into different pieces so they could visually see the distinction between hurd and fiber, the different parts of the stalk. We had the actual seed also in the grain broken down to the hull, the hearts, the chaff, things like that, completely broken down, the oil, the protein powder. We had different clothing from Patagonia. We had paper. What else did we have? That might have been all. But with the other really cool thing that we had that Erica had put together were visual charts that were actually very largely displayed that actually showed with graphics the different types of cultivation. So that when we are explaining to them, this is what grain cultivation is, this is what fiber cultivation is, this is what cannabinoid production is, they could see the actual fields and what it looks like and how clearly a very quick image and look at a field, hey, yes, this is a grain field. Yes, this is a fiber field. Oh, no, this is a cannabinoid field.
Because that visual inspection part of it ties into the exemption bill itself, right?
Correct. Yes, which is really what the inspection part is for the Industrial Hemp Act versus what we currently have under our existing program with USDA.
Which is a chemical testing where someone has to go out to the field, take a sample of whatever, and then test it for cannabinoid content.
Correct. Yes.
Which is like a pain in the ass for somebody who's just trying to farm, like thousands of acres, right?
It absolutely is. And it's expensive, and it's foolish when we're taking material off the field that really doesn't have cannabinoids in it, or the cannabinoids are getting destroyed.
Right. Like, because those final products have nothing to do with cannabinoid content.
Having these all displayed in the room, it was really interesting. We had different members come in and also some of their staff, and how many of them had actually never seen or touched a hemp product or an industrial hemp product. And some couldn't believe, like, oh my God, you could make clothes out of this. And I thought, yes, of course, or this paper. We handed out our one-pagers and on-hemp paper, and, just getting it in their hands, it really, you see their whole face light up, and you just see, oh my God, there's all this potential. And to also be able to show products by U.S. domestic manufacturers and explain to them, hey, these are the folks that are already out there. We need to help them secure a more accessible and also more reasonable, more cost efficient, feedstock, and be able to help our farmers provide that feedstock. It clicked for them, and it was just, it's so amazing to see over all these years, every time that happens with somebody, but also was very interesting and eye-opening how much education we still have to do.
Yeah. So what were some of the types of questions they asked you about the products or about the Hemp Act?
Yeah, good question. So some of the questions they were asking about, where the different manufacturers are, where they're sourcing their materials, how they're making some of the different products. And what was interesting also, and something that I experienced back in 2016 that, we're still dealing with today in 2023, is that some offices still didn't know this was even an issue. They think industrial hemp, or they see these products and they're like, what, there's a problem? Like, there's still barriers to getting these products to market, or there's still problems or issues for the farmers. And so explaining to them what we've done through the 2014 and 2018 farm bills, what still needs to be resolved in the 2023 farm bill and or other ancillary legislation, and also explaining to them what has happened versus, both in a very positive light and also in a very challenging light with the regulations or lack of regulations from the 2018 farm bill to today with our different agencies.
Okay. So what are you asking these congressional people to do? Like, what did you expect from them coming to the open house?
So for the open house, we really just wanted them to get their eyes on the products and to really understand what we're talking about. It's one thing to have a phone call, send emails back and forth, have legislative text on a page talking about policy, but when they can see the images of the farms, they can touch the products that are being made from those crops, it makes it more real for them. So giving them that context, in addition to explaining the legislation in detail for those that hadn't already seen it, answering any questions they had about the why or the how or what the framework actually looks like, how it's going to be implemented, and being able to explain to them the need, and really giving them that whole approach and being able to address it from so many different angles gets them to really understand why this is important and why we need their support and co-sponsorship.
Right, because a thriving hemp industry nationwide is going to be good for their local districts, right? Like, everyone benefits from having a robust hemp industry.
Absolutely. The amount of jobs we can create, having domestic infrastructure, being able to source materials domestically, helping our farmers, cleaning up our soils. we can go on and on, right? I mean, we know how incredible this plant is, and it's not just about the plant. It's not just about all the environmental benefits, but there's so many economic benefits as well that more and more of these senators and representatives are seeing. And those that have had or currently have manufacturers and farmers within their districts already engaging within our industry have already seen the positive light.
Right. So were you able then to sort of garner more support for the bill last week up on the Hill?
We actually secured 2 additional co-sponsors on the House bill, which was really fantastic. And we've had several other meetings with different senators and other members of the House, and are continuing to work on garnering additional co-sponsors.
Okay. Can you name names or talk about who supports it?
Yeah, everything's public. And it's all on congress.gov if anybody wants to go check it out.
Okay.
So we had Representative Smucker from Pennsylvania, and also Representative Muser from Pennsylvania also signed on last week, which was really fantastic.
Great. Good old Pennsylvania.
Two more Republicans.
Excellent. Cool. So it is technically a farm bill year. The old one expires the end of this month. What's the likelihood of seeing a farm bill this year?
That is a question for the gods. No, I mean, when we talk with the members of the House Agriculture Committee and we talk with the members of the Senate Agriculture Committee and both of the chairs, it's very clear that they have a strong desire to have a bill passed sooner than later. But obviously, there's a lot of other issues going on in Congress, like our budget. And so while the Farm Bill will expire September 30th and our current budget will expire September 30th, there seems to be more focus in the immediate on the budget. And so the likelihood of getting a Farm Bill by the end of September is pretty much not at all, 0. The House really wanted to push to have the bill done, at least the House bill done by the end of this month, but that's not very likely. So hopefully we will see a bill by the end of the year. That's more of what the offices are saying, at least on the House side. On the Senate side, similarly hopeful, but it could potentially go into 2024.
Okay, so what the Senate and the House, they would then have to reconcile their separate bills? Is that how that works? Okay.
Yeah, so what will likely happen is that the House will finish their bill, they will vote on it, and it will go over to the Senate. The Senate obviously will have a version of the bill already moving through their committee and going towards a vote. And at the end, they'll have to reconcile the bills, whether they each independently pass the bill or the House comes over with the bill to the Senate, and then they just work on that bill and make the amendments and changes that they need.
Okay. And this is sort of what happened last time in 2018. It was, it expired at the end of September, but it wasn't passed until December.
Right, December 20th, yes.
Yeah, but that doesn't even feel likely this time.
When we hear different things from different offices, some offices are extremely optimistic and other offices just don't think it's going to happen, given the other things that are going on in Congress, right? Which there's always other things going on. But it is the Farm Bill. It's a major piece of legislation. It's a bill that must pass. It funds our agricultural programs. It funds the SNAP program. These are critical pieces of American policy, and so it will pass. It's just, is it December? Is it end of November? Is it January 24? I think the aim is definitely to have it done by the end of this year. A lot of the programs will expire by the end of the 2023. While the bill itself expires September 30th, a lot of the different programs expire at the end of the year. So there's some urgency, but less from the perspectives of some offices. And, with the spending bill, with our appropriations bill, if they don't get that figured out or pass a continuing resolution, the government shuts down. So that, of course, is the main priority for the next few weeks, if not longer.
Yeah. And is it still your hope to have to get the Industrial Hemp Act of 2023 passed as a standalone bill, or you just think it's going to go right into the Farm Bill?
We would, of course, love to have it passed as a standalone, but given the fact that this is a Farm Bill year, negotiations are well underway. We have been working very hard on getting support from the agriculture committees and have that support, that our aim is to include it in the Farm Bill. language. And so we've been working very close with the House Agriculture Committee with, hopes to have the language included directly in the base bill. If not, we are prepared to have it adopted as an amendment into the bill. And, given the broader context of all the things that Congress is dealing with, and also that we have the Farm Bill, it's more logical for us to be advocating for inclusion in the Farm Bill rather than a standalone bill. If this was 2 years ago, it'd be a little bit of a different situation.
Right. Are you getting any opposition to this bill from people or organizations?
Not really. No. We've over the last 2 years that we've been working on this legislation, we've had different individual interests and different organizations raise concerns. We've worked with all of those different organizations or individuals, on what they need, whether it's a Department of Agriculture, whether it's an association, whether it's a private company that has certain interests. And we've talked with them, explained the policy. We actually made an amendment before the bill was actually introduced to include that chemical testing as a backup piece of enforcement to address some concerns that came out of the Department of Agriculture. And so now that the bill is on the Hill, we really don't hear concerns. It's more of getting folks to understand the need, what's going on, why, and usually once we explain the bill to them, they're like, oh yeah, that completely makes sense.
Okay.
It definitely needs to happen.
Are there other policy initiatives that you are working on?
On a federal level?
Any level.
I've been advocating for 1% from the beginning. So, I fully put my support behind the 1%. There's a lot of work to be done on the cannabinoid side. There's a lot of interest weighing in on that. But working, preparing for the Oregon 2024 legislative session and continuing to represent my clients' interests.
So how does this farm bill compare to, other farm bills? You worked on the 2018 farm bill, I assume. How are things similar or different to those times?
Yeah, things are actually quite similar to the 2018 farm bill. So I had actually started working with Senator Wyden's office back in 2016 on the concept for the Hemp Farming Act. And we started working on language early 2017 and working with McConnell's office. And so it was also about 1.5 years, almost 2 years of working on a standalone bill that was then put into the Farm Bill through an amendment. And so the work that we've done similarly on Industrial Hemp Act, will almost be at 2 years of working on this language. And ideally, we can get this just included right in the base bill. But if we get it added as an amendment, it would be the same procedure that we went through back in 2018 and having Senator McConnell adopt the Hemp Farming Act of 2018 into the Senate the Senate 2018 Farm Bill. And, this time maybe we'll do it on the House side, maybe we'll do it on the Senate side. So having a standalone bill that you've worked on for several, years and developing the concepts, getting the support for, gaining co-sponsorships for, it's the same strategy and procedure that we followed as what we did back in 2018. And, similarly, there's some controversial pieces of the Farm Bill for some, and maybe not for others. There's a lot of issues that go in to the Farm Bill. For us, hemp is the most important piece of it, but there's so many other pieces of agriculture and forestry that are very important for folks. And so those are all getting negotiated in the House and the Senate, and there's different interests, different concerns, different goals on both sides. And so those things are still being worked out. And, similarly, that bill didn't pass on time. It's rare for a farm bill to actually be passed on time. So I'm not really concerned about it. It's just getting folks to understand that, there are these different deadlines that come up. And so we do outreach specific, hey, that, there's this deadline in the House or there's this deadline in the Senate, we're garnering support for these particular benchmarks basically, but that the long-term goal is just to secure the passage. And so it's staying consistent, staying on message, continuing outreach until you gain that actual official co-sponsorship signed onto the bill showing on congress.gov.
You mentioned Mitch McConnell. Do you know where he is on the hemp exemption?
Industrial hemp.
Well, Senator McConnell's office, we've been talking with for the last several years, and
Industrial hemp.
I can't say either way specifically. I know his office is not happy with what has happened within the hemp industry for since the 2018 Farm Bill passage. There's a lot of concern that has come out of his office from different things that have happened, both with manufacturers as well as what's happened with the products in the marketplace and how things are or are not being regulated. And so to what extent he engages in supporting any piece of legislation relating to hemp, I think is yet to be seen.
Okay. Have you ever gone golfing with Mitch McConnell?
Industrial hemp.
I have not. Maybe that should be my new goal. Have you gone golfing with Mitch McConnell?
Industrial hemp.
I've never gone golfing
Oh,
with anyone.
well, maybe we need to get you out on the golf course.
I don't think so. Would I choose to go golfing with Mitch McConnell? Like, is that my only option?
Industrial hemp.
Or could I just go golfing with any senator?
I guess you could go with any senator. I'll allow it.
Okay. I'll get back to you on which senator I choose. Anyway,
How
what
about
else?
Chuck Schumer?
Chuck Schumer, maybe. He's closer, I think, than Mitch.
Industrial hemp.
He's in New York,
Definitely.
isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
And he's been very pro-cannabis and very helpful. I was able to actually physically hand our one pager to him while I was in DC. So
oh yeah, you just
that was
handed it
great.
right to him?
I sure did.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
In the lobby?
Outside.
Okay. Because do you consider yourself a lobbyist?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a federally registered lobbyist and also have been in states before.
Okay. Cool. So what else in the world of hemp are you keeping your eye on, or what should other people be concerned about? Is there anything else that you're seeing that might not be widely discussed?
I would say from a federal perspective, just keep your eyes on what's happening with the Farm Bill and if there's any new standalone pieces of legislation that get introduced, what's happening with the different agencies. Obviously, the HHS announcement is a big deal. It's, for marijuana, cannabis, but
Can you explain
what
that?
happens there? Sure. The Department of Health and Human Services made a recommendation a few weeks ago to reschedule cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. So it's a recommendation that DEA does or does not have to follow. DEA can go into their own rulemaking to determine if they want to actually reschedule cannabis. And they both have to go through their prescribed factors and procedures to follow. And I think what could be interesting, what happens with that decision, whether it does or does not happen, or if they go through a full formal rulemaking or not with it, that a lot of issues that we've seen causing concern both for cannabinoid hemp and industrial hemp are because marijuana is still scheduled, and the conflation between the two, and especially on the cannabinoid side with the different products that are out there, the issues with the marijuana industry versus the cannabinoid industry and how regulators are or are not addressing these issues. How much will that play into or not play into cannabinoid regulation? Does Congress need to act still? Maybe. Will DEA act? Will that lead FDA to acting? We don't really know yet what's going to happen, but it was a historic announcement. And so paying attention to anything that comes out of the DEA and or FDA is, I think, very critical to anyone engaged in any sort of cannabinoid business, whether you are on the adult use, medical, or hemp side. And then, of course, continuing to pay attention to different state laws. A lot of states are either in rulemaking right now or they are preparing for the upcoming their next legislative session. And so what are the goals within that state? Are there pieces of legislation that may not have passed the previous session that are still going forward? There's a couple different lawsuits around the country right now as well that are making changes. So there's a lot up in the air. And I mean, it's a lot more so on the cannabinoid side. For those in the industrial sector, our main focus is on Industrial Hemp Act.
Right.
It seems from the beginning of this, the policy never has settled yet, right? We're still developing this industry. We're still putting together the pieces of what will be this beautiful picture of a domestic hemp industry. And it's all of us, that are building this puzzle together, and we're each a key piece of it. And so what is that final picture going to look like?
Right. Getting back to the rescheduling, in your opinion, is that like the way to go? Is that a wise decision if they end up doing that?
There's a lot of different views. Some just want it completely descheduled and set up a full regulatory framework on its own. Others see the value in getting it out of Schedule 1 and removing the criminal penalties and removing the issues with 280E and tax and being able to, create that more medical framework, the recognition that there is medical value. I think the jury is out.
Okay. I've heard some people speculate that rescheduling it would make it sort of easier for the pharmaceutical companies to sort of come in and capture the whole cannabis, medicinal cannabis space. Is that far-fetched?
I think there's potential for that. We started with these medical programs and moved to adult use, and some medical programs have been maintained and some have been completely torn apart really by the adult use programs, and the value that there was for patients in these medical programs isn't necessarily always still there or protected. And, we've also seen what's happened just with CBD, with the approval of Epidiolex and how challenging it's been for the industry. That being said, recognizing existing authority, within the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and the drug exclusion rule and things like that. So we don't know what DEA is going to do. Are they even going to follow this recommendation or not? Will they move it to Schedule 3? And how is that done? Would it even be held up in court the way that the rulemaking is done? That's, a lot of things that I've seen are contemplating, would a change like this even be upheld by a court, depending on what is done? So I think that there's a lot of interest in making a change. Whether this is the right change or not, I think is yet to be seen, because we don't know actually how it's going to be carried out. And there's also so much work that's been done over the last couple of years in these full legalization pieces of legislation that have gone forward to set up regulatory frameworks, to protect consumers, to alleviate the issues with the FDA, to help small businesses, to work on some of the social justice issues. And so will some of those more important pieces of this broader conversation, it's not just about the scheduling, whether it's rescheduling or descheduling, there's so many other pieces involved. How will those pieces get resolved or not get resolved?
A lot of moving parts.
Yes.
Yeah. I know we're coming up on we're over our time, because I know you have other things to do. So thank you for taking my call today. It's great to talk to you. I appreciate your perspective.
Yeah, it's great to check in. And we appreciate the continued support from Lancaster Farming on Industrial Hemp Act, and just your dedication to hearing from the industry and talking about so many issues and being with the people on the ground. It's so important that your audience and other audiences get to hear and see from people, because what I keep seeing, and I said this earlier, like, it shouldn't be shocking to me, but it is still shocking to me how much education we have to do. And it's not only on the industrial side, it's on the cannabinoid side, it's on the adult use side. Those of us that are within this industry, we know this plan. A lot of us, dedicate our lives to this, and we really care about this. And others just have no concept of how much effort and passion that we all have and put forward in this, but also how much of a positive impact this can have in so many levels. And so I just encourage folks to, be the good actors, have integrity in what you're doing with your products, with your messaging, with your education, your advocacy, things like that. It's what we're doing every day that is going to build that picture of what this looks like, and we can have an impact. And all of these years, decades of advocacy have led to these announcements, to these changes, to the recognitions in the courts. And so we have to continue that narrative, but I think we also have to be very cautious about what is that narrative that we're conveying, and just making sure that we are being very honest and transparent and really carrying forth the true value of what this crop and plant can be and can do.
Courtney Moran, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure to talk to you too, Eric. Thanks so much.
And just like that, the show comes to an end. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions or comments about what you heard today or about the hemp industry in general, please reach out to me. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. You can reach me at eherlock@lancasterfarming.com or just send it to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. It all goes to the same place. And if you want to call me up and leave me a message, I encourage you to do that too. 717-721-4462. All right, again, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, I will see you in the newspaper.
Industrial Hemp.
This episode of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2023 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited and produced by Eric Herlock, and the music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.